Donald Cerrone was born on March 29, 1983 in Denver, Colorado. He was considered a bit of a troubled kid when he was young and took up street fighting in adolescence, which often resulted in him spending nights in jail. When he was 16, his parents had enough of his behavior and fighting that they sent him to live with his grandmother. Donald's grandmother welcomed him with open arms, and after bailing him out of prison after some street fights, he would act like nothing had happened the next morning. He would just say, "You know what you're doing," and drop the subject. At age 20, Donald started kickboxing and then switched to Muay Thai and was pretty good. After winning several kickboxing competitions, he decided to pursue a mixed martial arts (MMA) career and adopted the nickname Donald Cowboy Cerrone. He won several fights and soon began appearing in WEC title fights. After leaving the WEC, Donald signed with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC, the most popular fight promotion company in the world. Fighting in the UFC, he rose to superstardom and became one of the greatest drafting fighters in the promotion's history. In addition to fighting around the world and being in the biggest fight promotion, Donald is a bit of an adrenaline junkie, which is typical for many members of this community. Outside of training and competing in the UFC, he participates in many high adrenaline activities such as dirt bike riding, off-road racing, water skiing, and even bull riding. One of the things Donald really enjoys doing is diving. After receiving his certificate during his high school years, he fell in love with everything diving. He loves wreck diving and everything about diving. But his favorite is diving at Aerolito Cave in Cozumel, Mexico. In 2018, Donald Cerrone was in Cozumel, Mexico, and decided to dive with a friend, Alex. During the first 3 or 4 days of their trip, they, along with a few other friends, dived on some wrecks and coral reefs. They also planned a slightly more serious dive for just the two of them, which would take place in Aerolito Cave in an area known as Caleta. After kissing his wife and newborn baby on August 17th, Donald left home to meet Alex for a dive. His wife was uncomfortable diving with him in the cave because she was concerned about Alex's abilities as a diver. Alex and Donald had been caving together for years, and although Alex wasn't as skilled as he used to be, he still had a sharp mind. Donald assured his wife that he would return as usual and return home as usual. His wife was worried though, so as an added precaution and to reassure her, Donald ordered an additional air cylinder. He had originally planned to take 2 cylinders for diving, so now he would have 3 in total. In cave diving, the rule of thirds typically applies. This states that they will use 1/3 air during the dive, 1/3 as they exit, and then have a third reserve in case the unexpected happens. The cave has guidelines, which are long ropes that guide people into large caverns discovered and mapped by the first divers. These guidelines are used to help divers get in and out of the cave. Donald and Alex entered Aerolito Cave through a small, unassuming lake on the surface. Then, they traveled along different lines of the pond. At some point, they had to switch from one line to another. Alex went first and wore his light around his neck to make the change with both hands. However, Alex's fins suddenly loosened and he flew to the ceiling of the cave. Then he slammed his feet, turned around, and in the meantime, the guideline, the lifeline, surrounded him. Donald immediately swam over to Alex to help him, but Alex began to panic. Then it spun around even more, crashing into the walls of the cave and kicking up all the mud at the bottom of the cave. The mud reduced visibility to almost zero, as a dense fog enveloped small areas inside the cave. Aerolito Cave was now completely mud. Knowing how dangerous this situation was, Donald took a few steps back and positioned himself next to the line, arms outstretched. By doing this, he prevented himself from getting stuck around the line and was able to regain his line of sight. Now, Donald knew he was safe next to the line, leaving Alex on his own. Because there was a rule that a person who panics poses a threat to anyone who tries to help. Donald looked in the direction of the exit and felt safe. Because he knew the way out. He could easily swim there and know for sure that he would come out alive. He also looked at the completely muddy area where Alex was and knew that Alex would almost certainly die without help. Somehow, in his panic, Alex turned off his light, Donald just sat there hoping he didn't drop his mouthpiece and wasn't choking to death just a few feet away. After a few minutes, Donald decided to dive into the silt to answer a question for himself. He no longer had any idea of any direction. He lost his bearings, whether it was up or down. For a moment, he hit his head against the ceiling of the cave and then closed his eyes. The blow to his head made him feel calm for a short while, and then he was able to slow his breathing. He glanced at his watch and pressure gauges and knew that he had a third cylinder that was still fully charged and in use. Then, he closed his eyes and sat there in the black mud, trying to think and plan in a panic. The first thing he had to do was try to figure out where he was by feeling with his hands in the silt. Typically, with good visibility, divers mentally record different prominent points in the cave so they can find the exit. But this channel was one they were about to explore. They weren't going out, so it was complete strangers. Then, when it turned out to be a misty intersection, he dived into the misty area and started moving forward, touching the wall with his hand. This created a problem when he realized he needed to switch to the other side of the main line they were using. At that moment, the only thing he noticed was that he was completely separated from the exit that he must have known was thousands of meters ahead of him. Also, there was a jump between where he was and the exit, meaning he wasn't connected. Donald sat for a moment and, as he sat there, thought about how he had left home in the early hours of the morning to kiss his wife and child. Then he thought of writing a farewell note for his wife and child. However, for fear of drowning, he thought about how he would take his last breath before dying. At that moment, he was relieved of one of his greatest fears, the idea of drowning. He decided to stop himself. This time, he remembered that there was a large crack running across the ceiling of the cave. Panicked, he began to crawl along the ceiling, breathing deeply and hyperventilating. Suddenly, he found the crack. He clung to the crack and began to crawl along it. At that moment, he saw a green light in the distance filtering into the cave. Donald swam quickly toward the light, still panicking, still hyperventilating. When he reached the clearing, his tubes were stuck and wouldn't move. He struggled and struggled, but finally managed to fit into the crack with the tubes open. Then, he reached the opening of the cave. When it came out, the relief was incredible. 1 second he was writing a farewell note to his wife and child, and the next second he was going home to see them. When she said goodbye to the water, she saw Alex just sitting there. Finally, Donald picked up his phone, texted his wife, and said, "I had a bit of a scary moment today, but I'm coming home." This story is based on Donald Cerrone's own narration. I will add the link to that video in the description section to better understand the chain of events. If you have read this far, I want to congratulate you. I hope you liked the video. This is the 6th part of the series about the events that took place during the cave exploration. If you like this type of content, don't forget to check out my other videos. If you want to support my channel, you may consider liking this video and leaving a comment below. If you're new, I'd appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss my weekly videos. Thank you for watching again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching this far. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you in the next video. Have a nice day.